All right, so ready to kind of dive into this idea of creativity. We're looking at The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's not really even just about art. It's about just like approaching life itself with this kind of creative energy.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that's so fascinating about this book is how Rubin really emphasizes the idea that we are all inherently creative.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something that's reserved for artists with a capital A,
Right.
or, people in certain fields.
He even says making a Philly cheesesteak is a creative act.
Yeah.
So how do you put that in the same category as like building the Golden Gate Bridge or creating an iPad?
I know, it's interesting. He uses those very diverse examples, and he throws in things like the White Album.
Right.
To illustrate this point that creativity isn't confined to these specific fields or activities. It's really about how we perceive the world.
Yeah.
How we kind of filter that information and ultimately how we contribute to the world around us.
Right. Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
We're all artists.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Right. Well, it's not necessarily about like unearthing some hidden talent that you have.
Right.
You never tapped into before, but it's more recognizing that creativity is as natural to us as, building a nest is to a hummingbird.
Yeah.
It's instinctual. It's in our nature to create.
So it's not about learning to be creative. It's just like tapping into something that's already there.
Precisely. And this is where it gets really interesting, because he even says this creative energy isn't something that we solely generate internally.
Oh.
There's this idea of receiving it from what he calls the source.
Okay.
And then we filter that source through our own unique lens.
So it's not about coming up with something out of nothing. It's about receiving something and then shaping it.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about being open to receiving that creative energy from the world around us.
Okay, so walk me through this a little bit more.
Sure. So he describes this as a vessel and filter system. Okay, so think of your own vessel as everything that you've gathered throughout your life.
Yeah.
Your experience, your knowledge, your emotions, all of that is held in your vessel.
But it's not like a straight line from the source into our creative vessels.
You get it. There's a filter involved.
Okay.
And that filter is shaped by our individual perceptions, our biases, our assumptions.
So is the goal to try to like remove the filter?
It's not necessarily about removing the filter, but becoming more aware of what's shaping it.
Okay.
Because that allows us to then be more receptive to that source.
So the more aware I am of my own filter, the more open I am to the creative energy that's all around us.
Yeah, that's the idea. And he even talks about, the universe is constantly offering us these clues and guidance.
Okay.
But sometimes our filters prevent us from seeing them.
Yeah.
He even tells this great story about finding a book seemingly by chance, right when he really needed some advice during a health crisis.
Oh, wow.
He had appendicitis, and the book that he found gave him the exact advice that he needed in that moment. And he saw that as, a clue from the universe.
It's like the universe is talking to us and we're just not listening.
Yeah. And those moments that, make you feel connected to something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
Whether it's, a breathtaking sunset or a piece of music that moves you to tears. Rubin sees that as this kind of spiritual component of creativity.
Wait, hold on. Spiritual component. That sounds kind of out there.
Not necessarily. Think about it this way. Have you ever felt like when you're completely absorbed in a creative activity,
Yeah.
that everything else kind of falls away?
Absolutely. Like you lose track of time and you're just in that moment.
Exactly. And that feeling of flow, that sense of being connected to something larger than yourself. That's what he's referring to.
Okay.
Those moments when you feel like you're really tapping into something beyond your own individual ego.
So it's not about religion. It's about that sense of connection.
It's about that sense of connection, that feeling of awe and wonder.
Okay. So how do we refine that filter? How do we get to that point of like being able to see those clues and receive that energy?
Well, he talks about this idea of submerging yourself in the world. And I don't mean like, scrolling through social media or anything like that.
Right.
It's about really immersing yourself in nature.
Okay.
Engaging with great works of art, and also exploring the landscape of your own inner world.
So it's like paying attention to both the outer world and the inner world of thoughts and feelings.
Exactly. And he emphasizes the importance of noticing the smallest details.
Oh.
Slowing down and observing how even something seemingly static, like, light and shadow, is constantly changing and revealing new nuances.
So just like paying more attention.
It's about cultivating this heightened awareness
Okay.
that allows you to see the world with fresh eyes
Yeah.
and to tap into those subtle details that might otherwise go unnoticed.
And this somehow helps us to be more creative.
It expands our capacity for creative perception.
Okay, so we're not talking about like learning techniques or skills. It's about just like shifting the way that we see the world.
Right. It's about expanding our awareness and our ability to perceive the world in all of its richness and complexity.
And this all ties into creativity.
It all feeds into that creative energy.
Wow. Okay, this is really kind of blowing my mind a little bit.
It is a really interesting way of looking at things.
It is. I've always thought about creativity as like, I'm a talented person or I'm not a talented person.
Right.
But he's kind of saying that that's not even really the point.
Exactly. He actually kind of downplays the notion of talent.
Oh.
He sees talent as the ability to let those ideas flow through you,
Okay.
to be a conduit for that creative energy that's all around us.
So it's not about having some special gift. It's about being open to receiving.
Yeah, it's about being open to receiving and channeling that inspiration.
Wow. Okay, I'm starting to see this in a whole new light.
Good.
And he also talks about childlike wonder and enthusiasm, right? Like approaching both art and life with a sense of curiosity and awe.
Like you're experiencing everything for the first time.
And it's interesting because you look at kids,
Right?
they are so present and so creative.
Exactly. They're so open to experiencing the world with fresh eyes.
And it's something that we lose as we get older.
We do. We get bogged down in our routines and our
Our
habits.
filters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so he's encouraging us to recapture that childlike spirit.
Okay, so we've talked about being open to inspiration.
Yeah.
We've talked about refining our filters.
Right.
We've talked about tapping into that childlike wonder.
Uh-huh.
But what about discipline?
That's where it gets really interesting because he introduces this idea of habit and discipline as actually fueling creativity.
Wait, so you're telling me that in order to be like free and spontaneous and creative, I need to be disciplined?
It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But he argues that having a consistent framework
Okay.
actually provides more freedom for creative expression.
So it's like setting boundaries to unleash your creativity.
Exactly. And he uses the example of John Wooden
Oh, the basketball coach.
as a legendary basketball coach. He was incredibly disciplined, even teaching his players the correct way to tie their shoes.
Oh, wow.
Right. And he believed that these seemingly insignificant habits
Uh-huh.
actually created a foundation for excellence.
Okay.
They removed distractions and allowed the team to really focus on the bigger picture.
So it's like clearing away the clutter.
Yes, it's about creating a space for that creative energy to flow.
And that space is made through like having good habits and routines.
Exactly. And he suggests applying that same principle to your own creative process.
So whether it's like setting a regular writing schedule
Yes.
or designating a certain space for making art.
Right. Creating that kind of structure can actually free up your mind.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. But what about those times when you're just not feeling it? Like the creative well feels dry.
Right.
What do you do then?
Yeah. Well, he has some insights on that too. He talks about embracing imperfection and letting go of the need for perfection.
Oh, perfectionism, my favorite.
Yes, perfectionism is a major creativity killer.
Yes.
It really is. So he advises setting the bar low initially, allowing yourself to play and explore without judgment.
So it's like giving yourself permission to just like suck.
In a way,
In
yes.
the beginning.
It's about approaching that creative process with a sense of playfulness,
Okay.
allowing for happy accidents and unexpected discoveries.
And not being so afraid to like screw it up.
Exactly, because that fear of failure can really paralyze us.
Right.
He tells this great story about this legendary singer who, even after decades of success, still experienced debilitating stage fright.
Yeah.
But instead of letting that fear control him, he learned to accept it.
Oh.
He allowed it to be present without letting it define his performance.
So it's like making friends with the fear.
Exactly. Acknowledging it's there, but not letting it take over.
So it's like acknowledging our imperfections and just kind of going with the flow.
Absolutely. And it's also about recognizing that no work of art can ever fully represent you.
Right.
Because you're constantly changing and evolving.
Yeah.
So it's about letting go of that need to create a perfect representation of yourself.
Okay, so it's about the journey, not the destination.
Yes. Embrace the journey.
That's really freeing, actually.
It is. And it leads to another important aspect that he discusses, which is the importance of completion and releasing your work into the world.
Oh, that's a hard one.
There's always this temptation to keep tweaking and refining and striving for that elusive state of perfection.
Right.
But he reminds us No work is ever truly perfect.
It's never done.
It's never done.
You could just keep working on something forever.
Exactly. And so he emphasizes trusting your intuition, knowing when it's time to let go.
So it's like feeling a sense of completion, even if it's not perfect.
Yes. And recognizing that, creative energy is meant to flow.
Yeah.
And if we hold on too tightly to any one piece, we can actually block that flow.
So it's like you put it out there and then you move on to the next
You
thing.
move on to the next thing and allow that work to have its own life in the world.
Okay, wow, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Refining our filters, embracing imperfection, trusting the flow of creative energy.
Yes.
What's next?
Well, now that you have a better understanding of how to tap into your own creative potential, let's explore some of the challenges and misconceptions surrounding creativity.
Okay, let's do it.
All right,
Larry.
let's dive in. One thing that really stood out to me is this idea of non-competition in art.
Oh, yeah.
In a world where we're constantly bombarded with these messages about, winning and being the best.
Yeah, it's all about like who's got the most likes and followers and...
Exactly. And he's really challenging that whole paradigm.
Okay.
He's saying that true art is an expression of the self.
Yeah.
And every individual's expression is inherently unique and valuable.
So instead of trying to be better than everyone else, it's about being authentically you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that authenticity is what makes art resonate with people. He gives this example of Brian Wilson being inspired by the Beatles' Rubber Soul.
Oh, yeah.
To create Pet Sounds.
Yeah.
Which then inspired the Beatles to create Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Wow. So it's like they were feeding off of each other's creativity?
Exactly. Instead of seeing each other as rivals,
right,
they actually fueled each other's creativity.
That's a cool way to look at it.
And that's precisely what he's encouraging us to do.
Okay.
To focus on our own creative journey.
Yeah.
And allow ourselves to be inspired by others without getting caught in that trap of comparison.
Right. Because comparison really is the thief of joy.
It is. It really is.
So how do we define success then?
That's a great question because...
if it's not about
right.
being better than everybody else.
Exactly. Because it's so easy to get caught up in...
likes and followers and all that.
All of that, right? All those external measures of validation.
Yeah.
But he makes this really clear distinction between that and what he calls inner success.
Oh, inner success. What is that?
Yeah, he defines it as the feeling of fulfillment.
Okay.
That comes from creating work that's true to yourself.
Huh.
It's about aligning with your own internal compass.
So it's not about the outcome. It's about the process.
Exactly. It's about that process of creation and that feeling of, when you've really poured your heart and soul into something.
Right.
And you can release it into the world.
And you feel good about it.
Feel good about it regardless of how it's received.
That takes a lot of pressure off.
It does. It really does.
Because you're not so worried about,
right,
what other people think or...
It's not about pleasing other people. It's about pleasing yourself.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it's interesting, we've been talking about being open to inspiration, embracing imperfection, and now this idea of non-competition and inner success. It seems like a lot of this is about letting go of control.
You've hit on something really crucial there.
Yeah.
Letting go of control is a recurring theme throughout the book.
Okay.
And he actually talks about this idea of connected detachment.
Okay, wait, what is that?
So it's this idea of being fully present and invested in your work while also recognizing that you are not your art. Oh. It's finding that balance between passion and perspective.
So you're like all in, but you're also able to step back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're connected to the process, but you're detached from the outcome.
Okay. So how do you actually do that?
That's a great question. Okay. He suggests things like meditation and mindfulness as practices to help develop that awareness and detachment. It's about quieting the mind, becoming an observer of your thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them.
So creating space between you and your thoughts.
Exactly. And that ability to observe without judgment is what allows for true freedom of expression.
So it's like finding that balance between effort and surrender.
Yes. It's recognizing that you can't force inspiration.
Right.
But you can create the conditions for it to emerge.
So you're not just sitting around waiting for the muse to strike.
Right. You're showing up. You're doing the work.
You're doing the work.
And then letting go of that need to control the outcome.
This is really making me think about my own creative process. Yeah. I think I get so caught up in self-doubt and perfectionism.
That's so common, though.
Yeah, it can be really paralyzing.
And he has a lot to say about overcoming those internal obstacles.
Okay.
He talks about the importance of embracing vulnerability.
Yeah.
And silencing that inner critic.
Okay, so how do you actually silence that voice that's telling you you're not good enough?
It's tough. But one practice he recommends is simply acknowledging those thoughts and feelings.
Okay.
Without judgment.
So you're not trying to fight them.
You're not trying to fight them. You're not trying to push them away.
You're just like, oh, hey, there you are.
Yeah. You're simply observing them, acknowledging their presence.
Yeah.
And then choosing to focus your energy on the creative task at hand.
So it's like, okay, fear, I see you, but I'm going to do this anyway.
Exactly. And that act of acknowledging and then moving forward despite the fear can be incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
It's about reclaiming your creative power and not letting those inner critics hold you back.
This makes me think about something else he talks about, which is playfulness.
Yes.
Like, I think we often get so serious about, the end goal.
Right.
That we forget to enjoy the process.
Absolutely. He reminds us that creativity thrives in an atmosphere of playfulness and experimentation.
So it's about allowing yourself to be curious.
Yes.
To explore different possibilities.
Mistakes.
To make mistakes.
Without fear of judgment.
And not be so afraid to, screw it up.
Right.
It's like giving yourself permission to be a beginner again.
Exactly. Remember that childlike wonder we talked about?
Yes.
That's what fuels creativity.
I love that because it takes the pressure off having to know exactly what you're doing.
Yes, it really does.
It's just about following your curiosity and seeing where it leads.
It's about embracing the unknown and allowing the creative process to unfold organically.
And that's where the magic happens.
That's where the magic happens.
This is all making me think about flow state,
Yes.
That feeling of being completely absorbed in an activity.
Right, like you're in the zone.
Yeah, exactly.
And time disappears.
And is that something that you can consciously cultivate, or does it just happen?
That's a great question. And it's one that he explores in depth.
Okay.
And he suggests that while you can't force yourself into a flow state,
right,
you can create the conditions that make it more likely to occur.
Okay, so give me the secrets.
All right, well, one key factor is having a clear goal.
Okay.
And a sense of purpose.
So you're not just doodling around.
Right, there needs to be some intention behind it.
Okay.
But it's also important to strike a balance between challenge and skill level. If the task is too easy, you'll get bored.
Right.
But if it's too difficult, you'll get frustrated and give up.
So it's like finding that sweet spot where you're challenged but not overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Well, he also emphasizes the importance of minimizing distractions.
Yeah.
Create a dedicated space for your work.
Mm-hmm.
Silence your phone.
Yeah.
Let go of any external pressures or worries.
Create a little sanctuary.
Create a sanctuary for your creative spirit.
Yeah.
And he also talks about the importance of having a ritual or a routine that helps you transition into that creative mindset.
So it's like signaling to your brain, okay, it's time to get creative.
Exactly. It could be something as simple as listening to your favorite music, lighting a candle, or doing a few minutes of meditation.
Okay.
And then finally, he emphasizes the importance of simply showing up and doing the work, even when you don't feel inspired.
So you're not waiting for inspiration to strike,
You're creating the space. You're setting the intention.
And then you're getting to work.
And often that's what sparks the inspiration.
Often the inspiration follows the action.
Okay, so it's really about shifting our mindset.
It is.
And our approach to creativity.
Yes.
It's not about waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect idea.
Exactly.
That's about cultivating those qualities.
Right.
Like openness, curiosity, discipline.
Yes.
That allow creativity to flourish.
You've nailed it.
And that's really what his book is about.
And I think that's one of the most powerful takeaways from this book, is that it's not just about making art.
Mm-hmm.
It's about cultivating a creative way of being in the world.
So it's about applying these principles to all areas of our lives.
Absolutely. Whether you're writing a song, cooking a meal, solving a problem at work,
right, or
simply interacting with the people around you.
Yeah.
Approaching life with that creative mindset can really open up a world of possibilities.
Wow, this has been so insightful.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to hear, what are your biggest takeaways?
Oh, that's a great question.
From Rubin's work.
One thing that really struck me was his emphasis on listening.
Oh, listening, yeah.
He talks about the need to listen deeply,
mm-hmm.
not just to the world around us, but also to our own inner voices.
Yeah.
And he encourages us to practice active listening.
Okay.
Which involves, paying full attention to the speaker,
right,
without interrupting or judging.
Yeah.
And he also talks about the importance of listening to our intuition.
Ah.
That inner voice that often whispers truths that we might otherwise ignore.
It's like tuning into that quiet wisdom that's always there.
It's always there if we just take the time to listen.
Yeah. And he also talks about listening to the world around us, right? Like
yes.
The sounds of nature.
Sounds of nature, the stories of others.
Yeah.
The subtle cues that the universe is constantly sending our way.
So it's about cultivating the sense of attentiveness.
Yes.
To the world in all its complexity.
Exactly. And I think that's a really beautiful way to approach life. To be open to learning, to growing, to being surprised and delighted by what we discover when we truly listen.
I love that this has been such a great conversation.
It has been.
I'm feeling really inspired by all these ideas.
Me too.
And it's a reminder that, the journey of unlocking our creative potential.
It's ongoing.
It's ongoing.
It's a lifelong process.
It's a lifelong process.
So keep exploring, keep playing, and keep creating from the heart.
So we've really gone deep on this idea of creativity as like a way of being.
Yeah.
Not just for artists.
Absolutely.
But like for everyone.
Yeah.
But if we're all like these conduits of creative energy,
yeah,
why do so many people struggle with it?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think Rubin really hits the nail on the head when he talks about fear.
Oh,
fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough.
Uh-huh.
All of these fears can really paralyze us and keep us from taking creative risks.
It's like we build these walls up to protect ourselves.
Right, and we end up blocking the flow in doing so.
So how do we break down those walls? How do we kind of move through that fear?
Well, he talks about the importance of courage.
Courage.
It takes courage to put your work out there.
Yeah.
To be vulnerable to risk rejection.
Right.
But it's in those moments that we truly grow.
So it's not about being fearless, it's about being courageous.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging the fear and creating anyway.
Okay.
And he even talks about how fear can be a valuable tool.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it can alert us to areas where we need to grow, where we need to push beyond our comfort zones.
So it's like a signpost.
It's a signpost pointing us in the direction of our greatest potential.
I like that. Okay, so what are some practical things we can do to kind of move through that fear and access that creativity?
Well, he talks about having a daily practice that nourishes your creative spirit.
Okay.
And that can take many forms,
Yeah.
It could be meditation, journaling, spending time in nature, listening to music, engaging in activities that bring you joy.
So it's like creating a ritual, a daily ritual.
Yeah, create a ritual that helps you connect with that inner creative source.
And he also talks about solitude, right? Like having that time alone.
Creating space for quiet reflection.
Yeah.
For allowing those ideas to kind of percolate.
Yeah, it's like in our busy world, we don't have enough of that.
We're constantly bombarded with information and stimulation.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to carve out that time.
To just be.
To just be.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the creative process.
Yeah.
But what about the finished product? What about sharing our work with the world?
Well, Rubin believes that act of sharing our work is an essential part of the creative cycle.
Oh, okay.
It's about connecting with others, inspiring them.
Yeah.
And contributing to that larger conversation.
So it's not enough to just create in a vacuum.
Right. We have to put it out there.
Yeah.
Even if it feels scary.
Even if it feels scary.
And he encourages us to view that act of sharing, not as a means to an end, but as an act of generosity.
Okay.
It's about offering something beautiful and meaningful to the world.
So you let go of the outcome.
You let go of the outcome.
You just put it out there.
You just put it out there.
And whatever happens, happens.
And whatever happens, happens.
It's interesting because that kind of ties back to that idea of letting go of control.
It does.
Yeah.
It all comes full circle.
Wow, this has been a really powerful conversation.
It has.
It's like shifted my whole perspective on what it means to be creative.
I'm so glad to hear that.
And it's not about, being a painter or a musician or a writer.
Right.
It's about approaching life with this sense of curiosity and playfulness.
Yes.
And wonder.
And courage.
And courage.
And a willingness to embrace the unknown.
Absolutely. And I think that's something we can all benefit from.
I agree.
So thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the creative act.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all of you listening out there, remember, creativity is your birthright. So go out there and create something beautiful.